here we go with the rematch. What's good? It's Woog. We've got Artur Beterbiev, 21 wins and 20 knockouts, defending his WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO titles against Dmitry Bivol, 23 wins and 1 disputed close loss in that first fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. Dmitry Bivol in that fight lost his long-held WBA light heavyweight title, and this again is the rematch of the very extremely important battle for Undisputed in the light heavyweight division. It's just amazing that we got this fight and now we're getting this fight twice, which I honestly don't think could have happened without Turki Al-Sheikh and Riyadh's season. I mean, I just don't think that the boxing economy could have supported a Beterbiev versus Bivol fight. And again, now we're getting it twice, and thank goodness that we're getting it, because this hopefully gives us generational resolution in the division that we never got in the Adonis Stevenson, Sergey Kovalev, and then Andre Ward era. Andre Ward only had like 2 or 3 fights at light heavyweight, but essentially the long reigning champion Kovalev, the longtime unified champion, got toppled by Andre Ward, and Adonis Stevenson, the longtime WBC champion, got toppled by Alexander Gvozdyk. And for a few years, I thought we were going to get the same anticlimactic non-resolution in light heavyweight in this era that we got in the last, but no, Beterbiev versus Bivol went down. And again, it was an excellent fight, close fight, majority decision win for Artur Beterbiev. That's the first fight in his professional career where he didn't knock his opponent out. And prior to Beterbiev versus Bivol, Bivol had either stopped every opponent he fought or won via unanimous decision. No split decisions in Bivol's career before this Beterbiev fight. And you know, Bivol fought Sullivan Barrera, Ike Chilemba, Jean Pascal, Joe Smith Jr., Canelo. He just fought all these guys, Zordo Ramirez, and beat them all at least by unanimous decision. In the case of Sullivan Barrera, he stopped him in 2018. But yeah, these are the long reigning champions of the era. They basically either held 1 or more belts from about 2017, 2018 onwards. So we're talking like 6+ years of being on top in the division. And it's interesting because when I rewatched Beterbiev versus Bivol 1, the first time I watched it, I actually, I picked Bivol to win via close, like 115, 113 decision going into the fight. Then after watching the fight the first time, I thought that Bivol won. I thought that I saw Bivol win the fight, and I felt really bad for him when they announced a scorecard and gave it to Beterbiev. Like, I didn't call it a robbery, but it didn't feel right for me. And I didn't think that the right guy won the fight. This is after the first time watching it. After rewatching it, I actually came away with either a draw or Beterbiev edging the fight. And I think that it's an expectation game. I think that I kind of fell victim to seeing Beterbiev start resorting to having to work rather than destroy. And I gave Bivol a couple of rounds because he was delivering the more eye-catching shots. And because he was landing so cleanly and it looked like he was blocking a lot of Beterbiev's work, I was looking at that as, this must not be going right for Beterbiev. It was almost a little reminiscent of Canelo versus Triple G 1, where Canelo was landing the more eye-catching shots, looking like he was framing his punches well, kind of getting, Triple G's head to snap back with, 2 to 3 punch combinations. And you saw the guy reputed to be the wrecking ball in the division coming forward, but whose best shots don't look like they're landing cleanly. This just didn't look like that didn't look like a Triple G fight. This didn't look like a Beterbiev fight, but you saw other attributes of Beterbiev start to take over. And when I watched it the first time, through 6 rounds, I would have had it Bivol 4-2 or Bivol 5-1. After watching it the second time, I gave Bivol the first 3 rounds, and then I gave Beterbiev the next 3 rounds. So I had it 3-3 after 6 in the rewatch. It's just always interesting to see the opponent. In this case, we'll call, it's a disservice to Bivol, but I'm just calling him the opponent because, Beterbiev's performance over performance looked like it was just otherworldly. The type of power and pressure, sustained power and pressure that he's had and that he's carried into his late 30s. Now he's 40, but Bivol is so good. He's among the most unbreakable fighters in the sport. And like Canelo, Bivol apparently has an outstanding, amazing chin, right? And unlike other Beterbiev opponents, just like, for Canelo, unlike other Triple G opponents, Bivol is so good, so technically skilled, and so tough. Let's not underrate the toughness, that he turned the proverbial wrecking ball into a point fighter. And I think that that's what Canelo largely did to Triple G. I still thought Triple G won the first fight. He just wanted having to use other methods than we were used to seeing him in his previous fights and all of his previous wins. And the same could be said for the second fight, where Triple G became such a jab heavy fighter. We didn't see the wrecking ball become so jab reliant in the way that he did in the second half of their second fight. So with Beterbiev versus Bivol, we see Bivol moving laterally brilliantly, just a lot of movement, right? And then he would set and fire on certain shots with combinations. Sometimes he would throw hard punches in direct exchanges with Beterbiev and get the better of those exchanges. So in those moments, you're like, damn, Bivol's doing a good job. Like, I can't imagine him doing any better, because Bivol's not like a knockout artist, but he's a underratedly hard puncher. And again, he was backing Beterbiev up in those spots. Then he would get back on his bike and it would look like a lot of Beterbiev's aggression was ineffective aggression. Yes, he was, kind of punching around the guard. Bivol did a great job at keeping his hands up. Beterbiev continued to try to march him down. And what I wasn't giving enough credit to was when Bivol would throw more punches, it would be more clear that he could win that round, that he was probably winning that round. When his actual punch output would reduce and his movement would increase to where he's now doing a lot more moving than punching, I wasn't giving Beterbiev enough credit for filling in some of that blank space with work. Even if that work didn't seem like it was the most eye-catching shots, it didn't seem like he was marching him down and breaking him in the way that we normally see Beterbiev break his opponents, like he broke Callum Smith, Anthony Yard, destroyed Joe Smith Jr., and just everybody else that he fought, right? He had a 100% knockout percentage before this first fight. But I wasn't giving Beterbiev's work enough credit because it didn't look like he was breaking Dmitry Bivol. But you've got to give something, even if it's, partially blocked by the glove or by the arm, even if it's not landing super cleanly, you've got to look at the fact that Bivol is still moving laterally, and his punch output is reducing. He's starting to do a little more tying up and pushing off to start buying more time. I just think that a lot of that work was more effective than I was willing to credit it the first time I saw the fight. So again, second time around in the rewatch, I actually had Beterbiev either edging it or I would have been satisfied with the draw, even though, watching the fight, nobody would have been satisfied with the draw. Like, we wait all these years to get Beterbiev versus Bivol for it to result in a draw. But this fight, again, was an excellent fight that I think that when you get a disputed decision and there's more conversation around who should have won the fight, it kind of takes away memory-wise in terms of what people remember. It takes away from how good the fight was. Like, I feel the same way about Triple G versus Canelo. Even 1, 2 was a classic, but even 1 was great, but it's kind of overshadowed by, oh, that really shouldn't have been a draw. And I feel like we get that with a lot of fights. We get an excellent fight with, a disputed decision, and then that ends up being the memory and what people want to take away from what would have otherwise been outstanding performances from both Beterbiev and Bivol, because we saw what made both of them great. We saw that even when plan A wasn't working for Beterbiev in the way that it normally does, he still was able to somehow just fill in those gaps with just persistent work. And the thing is, he doesn't have to load up on punches and look like he's totally exerting himself to throw ultra hard punches. Like, when he's filling in those blank spaces, those like little short punches as he's trying to move forward and Bivol's moving, those appear to be extremely hard punches. And, maybe there's also kind of an unfairness in how much credit we might be giving. Some of us might be giving Beterbiev just under the assumption that 1 Beterbiev punch equals 2 Bivol punches, or 2 Beterbiev shots equal 3 Bivol shots. I think that there's some of that going on as well, where Bivol's moving, he sets and fires with 2 to 3 punches that cleanly catch Beterbiev, but then we factor in, well, Bivol's not that hard of a puncher, so then if Beterbiev comes back and throws like 1 hard right hand around the guard that's partially blocked by Bivol, and we see Bivol continue to move, we're like, yeah, see that Beterbiev just let that punch go and something got through there. So there's a multitude of ways of analyzing and interpreting what these guys did in that first fight. But I think that all that discussion around what they both did, what they both did well, like, you know, does it seem right that Bivol's got a 1 in the loss column after that performance? Like, he did about as well against Beterbiev as you could do, short of being like an Adonis Stevenson level puncher. Because who knows if you were to get any, I mean, most people might think that Beterbiev would have beaten Kovalev or Adonis Stevenson. I'm like, I would have loved to have seen a 4-way tournament among those 4. You could add Andre Ward as a 5th in that mix, but I wanted to see not only Adonis Stevenson versus Kovalev, but if you could kind of like mix up the eras, be able to see Beterbiev versus Kovalev or Adonis Stevenson versus Dmitry Bivol. But in terms of the technical execution of Bivol's performance, I feel like that's about as well as you could fight Beterbiev, or at least I kind of suspect that might be the best Bivol can perform against Beterbiev. But again, there's so much conversation around that first fight with a little bit of disputedness and controversy to where it just merits a rematch. And here we are, Beterbiev versus Bivol 2. First of all, this is the quickest turnaround time that Beterbiev has had from one fight to the next since 2015. We're talking Gabriel Campillo and then Alexander Johnson, April to June. That was a 2-month turnaround time that Beterbiev had 10 years ago. And going into Beterbiev versus Bivol 1, I was wondering, is this too soon, given that just a few months prior, Beterbiev reported a knee injury? So that was one of the reasons why I picked Bivol to win a close fight, is because I'm thinking, you know, Beterbiev often gets injured between fights and often has to postpone fights to recover from injury, surgery, different things. I was thinking this might be way too quick for Beterbiev to be recovering from a knee injury and then to be able to perform against somebody the likes and with the well-roundedness of Dmitry Bivol. But again, we saw the fight that we saw, and it's just amazing that Beterbiev, after a knee injury, was able to move in the way to cut the ring off, to keep Bivol on his bike, to not follow Bivol, but again, to move laterally, to kind of trace Bivol and to make Bivol continue to work and to continue to let those punches go on the move. Beterbiev did that after a knee injury. I'm just kind of surprised that Beterbiev's able to make it to the ring like 4 months after Beterbiev versus Bivol 1. Like, how is Beterbiev all of a sudden able to just have a 4-month turnaround time when he's often fighting like once a year, or just at least having long periods between fights? And again, he's 40 years old. So I think that this is a good thing. I mean, they're varying schools of thoughts. Like, you know, Terrence Crawford for a while has been more or less a 1 fight a year fighter, or at least doesn't fight very frequently. And some people think, okay, well, he's, you know, in his mid to late 30s, so maybe the infrequent fighting is better for body preservation. So I'm not sure what to make of Beterbiev returning to the ring 4 months after the toughest fight in his career. I mean, he didn't get knocked down. He got knocked down against Callum Johnson, but I mean, neither of these guys got knocked down, but this was almost like a stalemate, to where, again, going into the scorecard, you don't know who won the fight. So yeah, this was Beterbiev's toughest challenge. And 4 months after that, he's gonna return to the scene of the crime and do it again. That's just very interesting to me. And I mean, I'm assuming that it might be a good thing that he's coming right back 4 months later, no injuries in between, or at least none that were reported or that we know about. So I'm not gonna make too much of Beterbiev's age, because, you know, quite frankly, I'm a little tired of doing that. I feel like there have been at least like 4 to 5 fights where I'm like, you know, well, Beterbiev is 37, he is 38, he is 39, and then he goes to the ring and does what he does, and it's like, let me just shut up, right? So Beterbiev coming back to the ring 4 months later, unusual for him. I mean, unusual for either of these guys. That is a very tight turnaround time, but I'm glad that we're getting it. And I'm just wondering, again, can Dmitry Bivol outdo his first performance? Like, if you look at the way that he fought those first 3 rounds, I don't see how you box Beterbiev better than that. Like, I know that Beterbiev isn't the fastest starter, but Bivol was so on point, slipping jabs. His timing was impeccable when he would come in, set and fire, and again, catch Beterbiev super cleanly, start backing him up. But he did start to wane in like the last 4 or so rounds. I mean, Beterbiev again caught up to him in terms of winning some rounds between rounds 4 and 6. I gave those to Beterbiev. Am I to assume that Bivol is going to be able to do better and control the action for longer than he was able to in that first fight, for that to be the case, I almost feel like there would have to be some substantial drop off for the wrecking ball that is Artur Beterbiev. Like, age would have had to catch up with him, or maybe he's not as mobile as he was in their first fight, and therefore Bivol's able to make this a Dmitry Bivol looking fight for at least longer before it becomes a, hey, Beterbiev looks like he might be outworking him now. But I can't underestimate what Bivol's likely to do any more than I can underestimate what Beterbiev might be able to do at his age. So I expect Bivol to be as resilient, as mobile, probably, I don't know how you get more determined. Like, Bivol sounded, I expected him to be madder at the decision, or at least look more incredulous. But I mean, he always has a poker face, but he really seems like he was more or less okay, disappointed, but okay with the decision, and acknowledged that he could have done more. So if he really believes that he could have done better in that first fight, then I think that maybe he can do more to look like he's not moving so much more than he's punching throughout the middle and late rounds of the fight. Yes, he did. I thought he stole a couple rounds in the second half of the fight, but again, I thought that Beterbiev won the majority of them. Maybe Dmitry Bivol could come in a little bit better condition, or I don't know if he should be more willing to throw to trade with Beterbiev, which again, he did it in the first fight. Like, look in the first couple of rounds, like even in the first 2 rounds, look at some of those right hands that they both fired at the same time. That's that Russian roulette where, like, you might get your head whacked in those exchanges, right? Like, you really are rolling the dice when you fire on a right hand at the exact same moment that Beterbiev is. Like, good luck, right? It didn't work well for Joe Smith Jr. But then again, Joe Smith Jr. was probably jabbing from distances that Bivol knows better than to jab from. So Bivol is about as high IQ as they get. Can he work more and be a little bit more offensive in the second fight? I think that he can be a little bit more offensive, but I feel like if he's more offensive, he's just gonna get hit more and hit cleaner by Beterbiev, and that can't go well for Bivol. So I was gonna come into this video predicting Bivol to win a decision because, again, at first I thought I saw him win a decision in the first fight, and I was thinking, if this fight more or less plays out in the same way that it played out the first time, Bivol could win that decision. Like, that exact fight could play out and they award it to Bivol. I'm just talking about what I expect to see in this fight. The judges are going to do what the judges are going to do, so I'm going to try to predict on what I think the official ruling is going to be, but I'm also going to kind of distinguish that from what I think I saw, because sometimes those two things aren't congruent. But again, during the rewatch, I understand why Beterbiev was awarded the decision. Now, I expect Bivol to get off to a good start like he did in the first fight, but I don't think Bivol's going to run away with a 3-0 lead in the way that he did in the first fight. I think he's going to start well, but I think Beterbiev was emboldened by how the second half of the fight played out, and I think that he might get a faster start in this rematch. Like, I think that this fight is going to end up being as close basically as the first fight, or at least kind of approximating the closeness. I mean, you don't get much closer than that first fight, but although the conventional wisdom says, or would have said before the first fight, Beterbiev via knockout or stoppage or Bivol via decision, I was never going to rule out Beterbiev via decision. Like, I knew that that was a strong possibility just because I knew that he had just a sustained work rate. I didn't think Bivol via stoppage was a real possibility, nor do I think it will be in this rematch. And although Beterbiev can still stop Dmitry Bivol, I'm definitely giving Bivol the benefit of the doubt. And again, I expect him to be the unbreakable figure that he's been throughout his career. I don't think Beterbiev is going to get the stoppage. Even if he hurts Bivol here, even if he drops Bivol, I just think that Bivol has too much intestinal fortitude, too much craft, too much IQ, too much ability, skill, chin, just all of that to get stopped. I think that sometimes when you get fighters that are this evenly matched, even if their styles are very different and you're dealing with a wrecking ball in Beterbiev, I think that, like Golovkin versus Canelo, their first 2 fights, it's going to be anybody's guess going into the scorecard who won the fight. I've really been on the fence. I've been back and forth on who I think is going to be awarded the split decision win. I'm going to go with Dmitry Bivol to win this rematch via close split decision. I think that he's going to get off to a good start. I think that it might be 3-1 after 4, but I think that this one might look like Dmitry Bivol wins 2, then Beterbiev wins 1, then Bivol wins 1. I think it's going to be like back and forth in terms of them trading rounds. I think we're going to get more explosive moments. I mean, not that we didn't get any sensational moments in the first fight. Again, no knockdowns, nothing like that. I still don't think we're going to get a knockdown here, but I think that we are going to get moments where Bivol might look like he's in trouble, but I also think that we're going to get more clear rounds for Bivol than we did in the first fight. Even though we got a few in the first fight, I know I'm kind of all over the place with this prediction, but I'm going to go with Bivol to edge a split decision win over Beterbiev. And this might be a case where Bivol gets awarded the decision, and the public, many of the public, might think that Beterbiev deserved the win here. But I think that I'm going to see Bivol pull off a 7-5 win. I just think that he knows the adjustments he needs to make. He knows that he can't allow the optics to devolve into, well, Bivol is clearly trying to buy time, and even though, like, how else can you operate against Beterbiev? Because if you're not moving, if you're not buying time, then you're sitting in the pocket with him, and that's not the way to go. So Bivol either has to move and make those movements transition into more work more effectively, but can you see that with just the continued downpour and the downhill approach of Beterbiev, where again he's filling in those blank spaces by getting the jab in there, by just kind of I call it a throwaway right hand, where because the guy's guard is up, you know it's not going to land cleanly, but you're still willing to try to sneak it around the guard to maybe catch some of the, you know, under the ear or some of that, because it's still an effective punch. And you know, Bivol said that his face got busted up because Beterbiev was hitting so hard it was penetrating the high guard. So I mean, what can you do if you can't put Beterbiev away? What can you do boxing wise to win that Bivol didn't do in that first fight? But again, I think he's going to find little pockets to work more. I think he's going to have high cardio. Is he going to have the same great defense against Beterbiev than he did, or as he did in that first fight? Because his defense, again, he kept that high guard up during the movement, even into the middle and late rounds. Do you know how hard that is? Even good fighters end up going from here to down here by the middle and late rounds, especially if they got somebody pressuring them in the way that Beterbiev is. Is Beterbiev going to try to do more work to the body? Is Bivol going to let his hands go to Beterbiev's body? That's a dangerous proposition, but something tells me Bivol's going to do just enough to edge the decision. I know I'm even having trouble seeing what he can do better than he did in the first fight. But again, even if his performance approximates what he did in the first fight, I think the decision can go either way. His shots, again, are very well timed and eye-catching. Maybe that goes a longer way with the judges this time, to where, yes, Beterbiev looks like he's doing a little bit more work, but Bivol is landing the more well-framed punches that look like they're kind of rocking Beterbiev's head a bit. But yeah, either way, I was tempted to go Beterbiev via decision again in this rematch, and I would not be surprised in the least if Beterbiev does win the decision. Extremely possible. I mean, this is almost 50-50 odds wise as well. I think that Beterbiev is a slight betting favorite in this rematch, but I'm gonna go with Bivol to pull it off via split decision, majority decision. You know, I also wouldn't be surprised with a draw. Like, if you check out the odds on that, because that might be worth putting some money on, a draw in this rematch. But I'm gonna go with Bivol to edge it, but a draw is very possible as well. I'm going with Dmitry Bivol via split decision. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the rematch. What did you think should have been the outcome in their first fight? What do you think each fighter needs to do differently? Beterbiev needs to do more of the same. I do think that he could land more clean shots in this rematch. And if he truly was coming off of a knee injury going into the first fight, well, then he might be even better with this 4-month turnaround. But yeah, let me know how you thought the first fight shaped up and who you thought won, and let me know who you are going with in this rematch. And also, do you think that the result in this rematch is going to merit a third fight between these two, or do you think David Benavidez will get a shot against the winner here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.